All right. Hello and welcome to Immune System Day 2. This is our final body system in Unit 5. And today's aim is how does the immune system maintain homeostasis? Our favorite word in living environment, especially in this unit, homeostasis, is a stable internal environment. Right, and what we mean by that is your body is able to maintain a stable temperature, stable blood glucose, a stable metabolism. You are surviving and thriving. That's homeostasis. Let's go ahead and add that. We are surviving and thriving, right? So homeostasis is that optimal state that we want to be in all the time. And how does our immune system help us actually achieve that goal? Well, hopefully we remember from last week that the immune system is the body system that helps us stay well. And it does this in two ways. It acts as a barrier to prevent illness. And it also, and this is most of its job, helps us recover from illness. And we're going to be talking more about that function during today's assignment. So how does our immune system maintain homeostasis? So in this first question here, the diagram below shows a cell in the human body, over here cell X, engulfing. This word means like swallowing. Another word for that is called phago, which means eat. Cytosis. So this is phagocytosis. So what kind of a cell in our bodies would swallow or engulf a bacterial cell? And you might also remember from last week, the word that we use to describe bacterial cells, where the bad guys in our immune system are pathogens. So, what cell in our bodies would engulf a pathogen? Well, it's not a liver cell. Liver isn't really part of your immune system. It's not a nerve cell. We're not talking about the nervous system anymore. And we did talk about red blood cells, but remember that red blood cells help carry oxygen and carbon dioxide throughout your bloodstream. But the other part of your blood that we talked about are the white blood cells, which hopefully you recall are a major part of our immune response. And our white blood cells make up our antibodies, and they have several different names. And we're going to be talking about more about white blood cells during today's lesson. But it is important to remember our immune system and all of the topics that we cover in living environment can be vastly much more complex than we talk about in this class. If you've heard like more detailed information about white blood cells, that information is probably correct, but we're just covering sort of the surface level here in living environment. For part A, I'm not going to be able to share this video like during my video, but there's the link right there, and the link is also in the description to this video. So go ahead and click that link and watch the kids' health video about the immune system. And it's just like the endocrine system video we watched. It's really cute. So go ahead and pause this video now, watch that video, and then come back where we'll go over questions 1 through 5. All right. All right. So oops. What are the major types of germs? So the major types of pathogens are viruses, bacteria, fungi, and parasites. So those are all different small, either living organisms like bacteria, fungi, and parasites, or considered non-living organisms, viruses. So they are either microorganisms, right, like very small little living things that can make you sick, or in the case of a virus, they're not considered alive, but they're still very small, like COVID-19 and the flu and the common cold are all examples of viruses. So what is a vaccine? A vaccine is an immunization, a shot, typically that you get before you get sick. So after vaccines, your body is more protected because it has developed that memory in your immune system, right? Part of that adaptive immune response. So what is actually in the vaccine, right? We talked a little bit about the COVID-19 vaccine last week, but within the vaccine, there is a dead or weakened strain of the pathogen so that your immune system is able to learn sort of like the chemical signature of that pathogen, usually with help of the antigen. So, excuse me, if you ever encounter that virus or bacteria, that pathogen ever again, your immune system is prepared to fight it. It already has the antibodies to fight it, and it will prevent you from getting sick. So what are lymphocytes? Lymphocytes are white blood cells, and phagocytes, you might remember we talked about that word phago before. Phago means eat, and what are phagocytes? They consume invading pathogens, killing them. Using that process, the phagocytosis, they take a bite and engulf, and not take a bite, right? They actually engulf or completely swallow the bacteria or whatever the pathogen may be. So why is your neck often swollen when you are sick? Well, it's because your lymph nodes are there and they are working overtime. They help your immune system as part of the lymphatic system. What happens is the pathogens, once they have been consumed, they go into the lymphatic system, and that sort of waste, those things that need to be segregated from the rest of your blood supply so they don't continue to make you ill, are stored in the lymph nodes. And you don't just have lymph nodes here in your neck, you have them in your armpits and in your legs, and they're all over your body as a part of that lymphatic system. So they help keep you healthy. And speaking of keeping you healthy, why was the character in the video so tired when she was sick? Why do you often sleep more when you are sick? It is to preserve energy for the battle raging inside, right? All those fighters in your immune system that are working really hard. Your body needs to conserve energy so that you can actually heal, right? Because when you're sick, even though you feel like crap, your immune system is fighting really, really hard to keep you healthy. All right, so now let's talk about those B and T cells. So let's talk about those B and T cells. Let me switch devices. Hold on. The immune system includes B and T cells, which are special kinds of white blood cells that are produced in the bone marrow, the thymus gland, and the spleen, the lymph nodes, and the tonsils. Wow. So those are all different parts of a segment of your immune system referred to as the lymphatic system. And there is a fluid called lymph, which carries these cells throughout our bodies, and our lymph sometimes mixes with our blood supply, but it also is a liquid communication system similar to the circulatory system that is able to travel throughout our bodies and is able to segregate pathogens and those different things that might make us sick from the rest of our cells and tissues. So, what are these B and T cells? Well, B cells are the cells that respond to specific antigens by beginning to produce antibody proteins that will bind only with that antigen. So B cells produce specific, or rather respond to specific antigens, and they produce antibody proteins that will bind only with that antigen. So the B cells are specific. As time goes on, the body comes to have different types of B cells because they're so specific. Oops. Each producing antibodies for one specific antigen. After having been invaded once by an antigen, some special B cells that recognize that antigen remain in the body for the rest of one's life. And this is called adaptive. Oh no. Adaptive immunity. And what that means is it develops during your life, right? So this adaptive immunity is not something that you are born with. You're born with the ability to develop these memories, but you are not born with the specific B cells. Instead, you develop those throughout your life as you're exposed to different types of pathogens. Which is why, for example, a brand new virus like COVID-19 is so dangerous, because no one in the human population had those antibodies. No humans had developed adaptive immunity to that illness. For example, the flu, which can be very dangerous, is much less dangerous because it's been around for so much longer. Many more humans have adaptive immunity to the flu or influenza, A or B. These are called memory B cells because they are already present in the body and begin making antibodies the moment they encounter the same invading microorganisms again. That is why individuals usually do not get measles or chickenpox a second time. The immune system remembers the first exposure to the disease and is ready to defend the body. And that's sort of the key phrase there. The immune system remembers. And that's really the cool thing about our immune system, is that it remembers, right? Memory B cells, our immune system remembers that exposure. Now, the T cells. Well, these T cells, we call them killer T cells, okay? They're pretty serious. They're hardcore. One type of T cell is called a killer T cell. Through protein receptors on the surface, they can recognize cells in the body that have been infected with invading microorganisms. The killer T cells punch holes in the membranes of infected cells. So this is not specific, right? The T cells can tell that this is infected. Okay? They can tell when a body system, or excuse me, when a body cell has been infected with invading microorganisms. But this is not a specific response. Instead, they detect merely infection, merely there's a problem. And what do? They go and they attack the membranes of those infected cells, sometimes injecting poison into them, hence killer T cells. So they're just like, there's a problem, yo, I'll solve it. I'm there. Another type of T cell called helper T cells, a little bit less aggressive, assists both the B and killer T cells. Without the helper T cells, the other members of the immune system cannot do their job. Nice, kind helper T cells, as contrasted with the killer T cells. But remember, those killer T cells are helping us. So these helper T cells assist both B and killer T cells. Without helper T cells, the other parts of the immune system couldn't do their job. And the the importance of helper T cells is shown by the fact that they are the cells that are destroyed by the human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV, which sometimes results in the disease AIDS. So if you've ever heard of someone that has HIV or has AIDS, hopefully not, especially AIDS. You can live with HIV with medication and be fine, but AIDS is the syndrome that would lead to death. But I digress. Your T cell count is very, very, very important to determining the health of your overall immune system. If you've heard the term immunocompromised, which has been discussed a lot with relation to COVID-19, people that are immunocompromised, it's a lot more dangerous if they get infected with COVID. They would have typically a low T cell count. So those helper T cells, they are white blood cells as well, but they are not the killers. They're not developing the specific memory. Instead, they are integral to the whole performance. They're like the stagehands. You know, if you've ever seen like a performance on a stage, and the people that wear all black that work backstage, they're not necessarily the stars of the show, but without them, the show wouldn't be possible. So how does the body tag an invader and mark it for destruction? So how does the body tag an invader and mark it for destruction? Well, there's two parts to this, right? We've got those memory B cells. So the memory B cells identify the pathogen, right? And they do this by recognizing the antigens on the outside, right? So those antigens are recognized by the memory B cells, and then the T cells come through and they say, I got you. And then the killer T cells come and destroy the infected cells. That's how it's done. Pretty important. But sometimes our immune system is a little bit too strong. Let's talk about organ transplants. Although the killer T cells are helpful in the immune system, they can make the acceptance of organ transplant difficult. Body cells have marker proteins on their surface, just like antigens, right, are marker proteins. So they can be confused for antigens, similar to antigens. That allow the immune system to recognize the cells, right? So we have marker proteins that mark our cells as our own cells. So your body knows this is your own cell, don't attack that cell. If an organ was going to be transplanted into your body, your immune system would recognize the transplanted organ. This process is known as rejection. So what this is saying, your body would recognize that the transplanted organ isn't your organ because it has different proteins on it. It doesn't match the rest of your body. This is why when you get an organ transplant, it's very important to find someone who is a match. And someone who is a match would have marker proteins that are similar to your own because they have a similar blood type or the same blood type, hopefully. They might be a member of your family. And there are different ways that they can test compatibility of the organ and the recipient, right? But if your body recognizes this transplanted organ and treats it like a pathogen, that is known as rejection. And what that means is that your body starts attacking the new organ. So it hurts the organ because it's getting attacked by your immune system, and it also hinders its ability to actually do its job, right? And when you get an organ transplant, that's not usually for fun. It's because you need a replacement kidney or liver to continue the functions that your kidney and liver typically perform when they're healthy in your body. So, to prevent organ rejection, doctors search for a donor whose cell markers are nearly identical to the cell markers of the recipient. And then the recipients must take drugs for the rest of their lives to suppress the cell-mediated response. So, why do some organ transplants fail? Due to rejection. The recipients body, specifically their immune system, attacks the donor organ as if it were a pathogen. So, your body recognizes like, hey, that's not supposed to be in here. Get out of here. And it can cause an inflammatory response, which would cause the organ to swell. We don't want an inflammatory response when we don't need one. And this can result in them having to remove the donor organ. And again, when people receive an organ donation, it's because they need that to survive. So this is why when you get an organ transplant, people need to take drugs, and those drugs are called immunosuppressant drugs. And what does that mean? It means it suppresses or reduces your immune response. And that's that cell-mediated response here, so that your body doesn't attack the donor organ and you get to keep it. So, all right, today's aim was, how does the immune system maintain homeostasis? And we went through and talked about the immune system watching the super cute Kids Health video. We read about B and T cells. We talked about organ transplants. And now go ahead and complete your exit ticket. Have a super fantastic day, and I'll see y'all tomorrow on Zoom. Bye, guys.